All right, welcome back to the DM James show channel, whatever. Today we are talking D&D, specifically old school. I hope you guys had the time to watch the Legion of Myth show the other day. My good buddy Squirrel Hermit was on it, talking about, the costs that people don't think of when it comes to role playing and etc. And I know me, since I started out as a war gamer, I don't know if I can consider all the miniatures that I've bought over the years as an additional cost. Because before I'd played my very first game of Dungeons and Dragons, I'd already played Johnny Reb and various other Napoleonic style games, Since I was really cool with our local history teacher, even though I was a pretty young man, um, I was part of that game group, and then after being part of that game group, I did get into D&D, but I stayed heavy into wargaming, and I switched over from the Napoleonics at 20 mil to BattleTech, and that was my deal until Rogue Trader came out. See, right now I'm painting some 3D printed goblins. He's wet. Let's see if I can get him to focus in, if I can lean my. Come on, let's center it. Maybe that'll help. Anyway, my camera sucks. I tend to paint my goblins a orange leathery color, and I don't know if that's from the um, old school monster manual or I just like them to look leathery and orangey. Uh, Same color I paint my hobgoblins. Since orcs, well, okay, goblins and hobgoblins are related, orcs are not. And that's why hobgoblins and goblins have a lot more almost human appearance, whereas orcs are basically pig faced monsters. Now, I know in new D&D, people decided that they would just take World of Warcraft orcs and turn them into D&D orcs, but no, I'm never going to be that guy. I'm sorry. And yeah, the idea that the orcs are somehow this misunderstood, honorable, barbaric race, like the orcs in Warhammer. No, no, sorry guys. Um, I mean, not really sorry. I'm not going along with that. Orcs will always be monsters. And playing a half orc in the campaigns I run, because I tend to use a lot of AD&D uh, concepts, even if I'm running a different rule book. Like even half orcs typically can never be good. The best they can hope for is like neutral. And the reason for this, varied reasons, but a big one is upbringing. Because however the orc was, the half orc, let's say, was brought up, even if it had a loving family or was brought up by the church, a lawful good church, which could be a positive influence. And maybe I might loosen up my thoughts a little bit on it. The reality is that civilization at large is going to treat that creature like absolute trash. And as a result, many half orcs will develop a straight up hatred for the people around them. That's just the way it goes. They might be well treated by whomever is raising them or not. Uh, a lot of humans, based on mythology, would consider the fact that they have sired a half orc to be like the most shameful thing ever, you know? And They might even get disowned by their families. It's a horrible thing because, again, unlike what some people would like to have you believe, uh, orc love is non-consensual, basically. Well, first off, they don't have love, but you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying here, right? So, yes, contrary to what modern Wizikos is trying to say, and I don't know why, because it's like, okay, if you have a person at the table and they've had trauma in their life, uh, yeah, they probably shouldn't be playing an orc. I mean, it is simply just that. And if the idea of how orcs are created is really bothersome to them, and it probably should be to all of us, really, it is kind of creepy, right? Um, that's more the reason to want to wipe them out before they can commit these same atrocities on some other poor person. Also, remember, while a lot of half orcs are orc human hybrids, they will reproduce with everything. And the only thing they can't have a child with really is a elf. For whatever reason, you cannot have a half orc, half elf, at least not in the original write ups, right? So a half orc can literally look like anything. I mean, it could be 6 foot tall, human looking, but ugly, and with a propensity to being an evil bastard. But like the assassin, that's part of the evil classic D&D characters, the half orc assassin. I forget his name, but I'll look it up later. It's in the tavern, the Shady Dragon Inn. He is as small as a goblin, but he's half orc, which means he's probably half orc, half goblin. And for some reason, in some societies, especially evil societies, or neutral societies that really don't care about these things, as long as no one's breaking the law, they don't care. I mean, segue. If you go into some cities, like in the Great Kingdom, and you go into a tavern, you are absolutely going to find orcs, etc. there, especially in the south of the Great Kingdom, since the nobles in that part of the Great Kingdom do have a tendency of hiring orcs and various other humanoids as mercenaries. And that means that it's not like they force them to, hide in the woods until it's time. They actually allow them in the city. Now, they're closely watched, and I'm pretty sure they're probably let known right off the bat that if they misbehave, the town guard is going to put a beating on them. But within a certain limit, they're allowed to be as rowdy as, a human group of mercenaries would be. And I mean, there are probably some women in, or, in the Funess, I'm talking Greyhawk, who, for enough money, would bed down with an orc. So I suppose you could have I wouldn't call it consensual, because if you're paying for it, I mean, that means somebody's desperate, but I'm not going to get into too much of that. The point is, though, yes, you could have prostitutes that would sleep with an orc soldier. And if they got pregnant, then now you've got a half orc, half human being in a city that's already not necessarily good, since, like I said, they hire orcs and let them roam the streets and stuff like that. And the offspring of our harlot and the orc mercenary, I think his life is probably going to be hard and his childhood short. So anyone who's thinking that this guy's going to grow up and become a paladin is probably out of their damn minds. He's probably going to grow up and become a thief or an assassin. Or maybe if he's big enough, he'll become a fighter, he'll join an orc mercenary group, and he'll end up taking over. I mean, another little known thing I think that people don't think about is a lot of orc tribes, while they might talk smack about half orcs to a point, right? At the other hand, half orcs are innately much more intelligent than orcs. And again, some of you are like, well, not in 5e. I don't care about 5e. 5e is trash. 6e is even more trash. And what that means is that a half orc in an orc tribe, because they're much more intelligent, better planners, etc., less likely to just berserker rage at the enemy and instead set up ambushes and stuff. Let's call it clever. These guys can not only rise to power in the tribe, they can become the leaders of the tribe. So, something to consider when you're talking about your orcs. Now, goblins and hobgoblins, they can reproduce with orcs, but apparently with nothing else. I'm not sure how that works because I've never heard of anybody playing a half goblin or half hobgoblin. Even though, to be honest, in my homebrew campaign, I would allow a player to play a hobgoblin because they had their own kingdoms and empire and all that, as they should. I mean, they're very intelligent, very organized groups, and yeah. But I guess the main thing I'm saying is, yeah, I paint my goblins orange looking, kind of like my hobgoblins. And I paint my orcs mostly human flesh color, but sometimes I give them just the slightest wash at the end of a really watered down green, just to give them that sort of greenish tinge while still keeping them pink and, basically Caucasian looking, except with big pig snouts, which the end of their pig snouts, if you really want to be awesome and put the work in, you can paint like a pale pink, and it looks really good. Actually, I think, you know. But yeah, so that's what's going on with painting these guys. Also, I'm putting together a 3D print this guy out. This has nothing to do with D&D, I'm afraid, but I think it could, because there's nothing preventing a person from being like, you know what, I think I'm going to drop this into a D&D game just to, be that guy, right? But this is, if you've ever read H.P. Lovecraft, this is the Dunwich Horror. The thing that no one could see until they did the correct ritual and it made it visible. And I guess the Whateleys or whatever had been feeding it just massive amounts of cattle. So, because my family are huge fans of Mansions of Madness, and I also would like to occasionally run like one offs of mythos stories I've come up with, I do tend to 3D print a lot of Cthulhu monsters, and I also tend to use them. You know what I mean? I mean, a lot of them are just cool. Like, instead of throwing giants at the group, throw gugs at them, but then don't tell them what the hell a gug even is. And then let them just try to figure it out, right? All they know is it's a giant, weird thing that lives underground in some ancient dungeon, and now it's chasing them down, trying to eat them. These are, you know, exciting. That's an exciting adventure. Now here is an orc boss. not necessarily a warlord, but definitely a high-ranking orc within the tribe. And he's got, a great weapon. He's wearing scale armor. Come on now, focus in. And you can see where I did all of his teeth in white. The reason I use such a bright white for the tusks is because I'm going to give him a wash of Agrax Earthshade, and that wash will make those white teeth look stained. Like this guy's been drinking lots of coffee every day. And if I need to highlight anything, I can. I can always touch up a little bit. That's a great thing about painting. You can always paint over something. As long as you're, not pudding painting all the time. And for those of you who don't know what pudding painting is, that's when you put the paint on super thick. And yeah, it can work, but the problem is over time, if you have to repaint the miniature, the paint will be so thick on the miniature that you'll find that you start destroying the details. And that's really not something you want to do. Consider that advice for free. So anyway, peace and love. I'll catch you later. This has been the Saturday video. We've been painting orcs and goblins because I've got a old school D&D game coming.